Former Speaker of the House of Representatives Newt Gingrich and co-author William Forstchen discuss Days of Infamy, their second novel on World War II. The event, hosted by Book Review in Huntington, New York, is 70 minutes.
Second, I think that when you are certain of what you're doing, it makes sense to be on offense. And I personally believe we ought to have a regime-changing strategy for Iran, but it ought to be designed on what Reagan did in Poland, which was a peaceful process of using economic, diplomatic, psychological, information, political pressures to change the government, because you don't have to be military in order to have a decisive impact if you're the most powerful country in the world and you're dealing with a relatively weak government. I mean, I think the Iranian government's not a strong government. It's just a brutal government. And I see no future where we have any positive future with either the Syrian, Iranian, or North Korean dictatorships. And we ought to be honest about that. Just as, frankly, we ought to be actively trying to replace the dictatorship in Zimbabwe, which is not going to get any better. And people can wring their hands all they want to. These are evil regimes that do evil things, to use the language of Ronald Reagan. But I think you want to do it carefully, and you want to do it with minimum American use of force, and you want to do it with an understanding of the limitations of reality. The other point I'd make is it is still, in the end, a very complicated world, and we are only one country. I mean, there's a reason that Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Winston Churchill kept meeting with Stalin. They needed him as an ally. It wasn't that they were going to become communist, and it wasn't that they approved of a totalitarian regime. But given the realities of 1940 to 1945, they were not prepared to take on communism and Nazism and fascism and Imperial Japan. Well, we're in the same boat. I mean, China's a fact for the moment. The Chinese dictatorship is a fact. As long as they're a fact, there's a danger beyond our ability to offensively change it. And if you're going to live in the world that has China, you better have a Homeland Security Department. And so I think you've got to constantly be balancing what can you practically get done and what can't you do. Do you want to add anything?
Yes. Something Newt and I have talked about repeatedly while doing our research on the World War II series. I believe the number of FBI agents on active duty in 1941 was about 5,000. They increased the number by what, about 3,000? Think about this. 10 months, 11 months after we entered the war, we send a transoceanic invasion fleet, the largest in history up to that time, departing out of Boston, New York, Norfolk, and others, to head to North Africa. I helped a general write his autobiographical account some years ago, and he said, as we were pulling out of New York Harbor, we were looking at all the skyscrapers in lower Manhattan going, good heavens, there's got to be at least one Nazi agent up there telegraphing the information. No, there wasn't. The FBI had gotten all of them at the very start of the war and did it effectively without violating the civil rights of American citizens. The very few attempts made by the enemy during the war to get into our country with outside agents, well, some of them were picked up right on this island here. You people most likely know the history better than we do. We did it very effectively in 41 to 45. The question is, why can we not be as effective today? I think that's a very important question to be asking in this election year.
Let's take two more questions, if that's okay.
How do you answer the argument that the doctrine of preemptive striking would threaten world security if every nation were to follow that particular philosophy? In other words, the United States historically believes in clear and present danger. If we agree that other nations have that same right, how does world civilization survive with that notion?
I think you raised one of the great questions of our generation. I'm going to give you an answer that some of you will find very troubling. I'm an American nationalist. I'm quite prepared to say I don't think the same rules apply to us and apply to Zimbabwe. I don't think the same rules apply to us and apply to North Korea. I think we made a huge mistake in designing the United Nations so you can't discriminate between predatory dictatorships and democracies. I think that the fact is that democracies collectively have a totally different standard of rule of law, a totally different standard of respect. I find I have a common interest with Canada, with Japan in its post-imperial phase, with Australia, with the French, with Italy, with countries that are democracies. And we have a bunch of predatory dictatorial regimes. And we have a handful of genuinely fanatic movements. And again, I will use language some of you may find a little challenging. There is an irreconcilable wing of Islam which would not allow any woman to be in this meeting. Now, I don't think we're going to cut a deal with them. And so I think one side or the other is going to win. And I am for modernity. I am for the modern world. I am for every person having civil liberties. I am for I am happy to have a mosque on Long Island, but I'd like to have a church in Mecca. And I don't particularly want a kleptocratic 17,000 prince dictatorial family that has stolen a country lecture me with money that we sent them for oil. Which is why I'd like to see a national energy strategy that allows us to have the United States be a lot more the center of the world's energy supply than Saudi Arabia. But that does mean I would apply a different standard to measuring countries that are democracies than I would apply to measuring countries that are dictatorships. And I would say to dictatorships as a general principle, do not threaten us. We're the most powerful nation in history, and our tendency is to hit you first. And so we prefer not to be threatened. Now, as I said, I think some people would find that challenging. We have one more question. So you're being famous. Although they're both going to be shooting in the back of your head, so I'm not sure how it's going to help them.
All right, now my question is repeating history. If you read about what Nazi Germany did to the Jews during the 30s, leading up to the Holocaust, and now you see all the rhetoric coming out of Iran and the Middle East, aren't we repeating history? We're letting Iran develop a bomb. I mean, this is a lot more serious than I think it was in the 30s compared to Nazi Germany. These people now have nuclear weapons, or they're going to get nuclear weapons. So, what are your feelings on that? I mean,
I have two views. I mean, one is I think that we live in a much, much more dangerous world than our political discourse and our news media describes. And I think that we are. And Senator Lieberman said this about a week ago after he'd had a hearing, and he said the danger of us losing a city to a nuclear or biological event is so much greater than we understand. And I've been trying to encourage them to pass a bill that would require the Department of Homeland Security to do 2 nuclear exercises a year and 1 biological exercise a year for real. And the first time we identify a city and we go in and say, okay, this is the part of the city that'll be missing. It's 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. We just closed down the following 60 square blocks because they're gone. And we're now going to have evacuation of the wounded from the next 150 square blocks. And by the way, half of our major hospitals were in the zone that was wiped out, which means we're now going to start using veterinarian clinics in the suburbs. And people don't understand how bad this will be. And then someday it's going to happen. I mean, we went through this in 9/11. I was warning about 9/11 for 6 years before it happened. I helped co-author the Hart-Rudman Commission in March of 2001 that said the greatest single threat to the United States is a weapon of mass destruction going off in an American city, probably from a terrorist. And I said, and we need a real Department of Homeland Security. We don't need the current bureaucratic joke. We need a real Department of Homeland Security, which means you need an institution. You need an institution which could respond to a nuclear event fast enough to minimize the loss of life. This is and you saw in Katrina. We're nowhere in this world.
So why can't we get it?
I think because it's very hard for your news media and your politicians to take it seriously. We have a huge, cumbersome, incompetent, bureaucratic mess that we call the government. If you want to see, my version of this is a YouTube video called FedEx versus Federal Bureaucracy. It runs 3.5 minutes, and about 1,400,000 people have seen it. And if you get a chance, go look at FedEx versus Federal Bureaucracy. And I think you know, where is our leadership and where is our capacity to have an honest taste into red versus blue, liberal versus conservative, personality baloney, and then you finally end up with whether or not Reverend Wright and Senator Obama did. And you think about it, we have now degenerated from a world-class problem that threatens our children and grandchildren with the very survival of their civilization to a pathetic inability to have a national dialogue as adults. And that's where we currently are. All right, go ahead. You have the microphone.
What Civil War battle?